Well, good morning, my garden and YouTube friends. Happy Memorial Day. This is May 31st here in the U.S. for people who are watching from across the pond, perhaps. And we celebrate Memorial Day. It is the day that we honor the soldiers who have fallen. Veterans Day, of course, is for everyone who has served, but today is reserved for those who have given their life, who've given the ultimate sacrifice, so that I can stand out here and garden the way I want to garden. Of course, within the HOA restrictions of this community, so I guess there's always somebody who's going to tell me what to do. But anyway, moving right along, I just wanted to show you what I've been up to, what little trouble I'm getting into in my yard. And you can see the marigolds are still hanging on. They still look pretty good. I need to come out and deadhead things. I think it's so important to deadhead your flowers, and it keeps them growing. Some of these I wanted to save, the big orange ones. I wanted to allow them to go to seeds so that I could produce these again next year. That would be lovely. And I've promised some of my neighbors that I would share the seeds with them as well, because it's really, let me just take you back over here. It's really quite a this is coming up to my rib cage. So I'm 5'6", so it's probably close to 4 foot. And but I'll just do a nice little sweep. I think since the last time I showed you anything, I put in this little bark border. And this actually came from oak trees that we had in the backyard. And I allowed those, they were probably, I don't know, 14-inch logs. And I allowed the bark to separate from the actual wood, and so then I could use them to for, I thought it would be a craft project, but I think this works pretty well, kind of holding back. And whenever Rick cuts the grass, and he has a barrier, and hopefully won't run over my plants. So things on the side are pretty much as they were. I've got still my shrubs, and I've got crocus back there, and I've been trying to keep the border nice and clean from weeds. And I use a little hoe that I kind of come along with, and I also spray it. I just use straight bleach. I know that's probably not good for anything, but I only do it a couple times a year. And bleach actually dissipates within 24 hours, so I don't think I'm hurting anybody too bad. Along the front here, my azaleas are finished blooming, so I've cut those back, because they really do need to be cut back every couple years so that the undergrowth has a chance to flush out. And you can see I've got milkweed coming back. You could pull this out for days and it would still keep coming back, but I do try to keep little patches for my monarch butterflies. And then the Japanese giant red mustard is just it's really it's a star. It really is. I see I've got a few little holes, but I don't know what that is, and it doesn't seem to be really that bad. So these will be the next leaves that we use for our salads, and we could eat off just this patch probably every night. I haven't bought greens from the grocery store in over a year, and I've been growing my own lettuce. I'm here in Windermere, Florida, zone 9B. I don't know how this will hold up to the summer heat, but we've already had days in the 90s, and it seems to be doing just fine. It does get irrigated pretty much every morning in this heat, so you've got to provide a liquid. You've got to provide hydration for it. So those of you who have asked me about this border, it really is just bricks laid sideways, laid diagonally on a point, and then I laid weed mat in between this, and I did it 4-ply. I thought nothing's coming up, and this was 5 years ago. And I don't really, every once in a while I'll see a weed and I pull it, but for the most part it's terrific. And then the stones in the front really keep it all intact. It doesn't, occasionally, you know, we're going over back and forth and we'll knock a stone out of place, but for the most part it holds. It makes a nice appearance. It's clean. It separates everything from, you know, from the flowers to the grass, and kind of gives a definition, and I think that looks really nice. And I'd like to do it on the driveway side. I'll show you in a minute. We had an accident here a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago, and this pot fell forward and it smashed the dwarf mock orange that was in front of it. And the others, there were 8 or 9 altogether that formed a hedge. It looked very out of place. It looked like a big hole. So we took the pots and we lowered the pots from being on top of concrete blocks to just being on some bricks to hold them up from the ground. And that kind of brought that part down. And then I took the shrubs and I trimmed back about 6 or 8 inches, and that helped. And the one that did get smashed it looks like it's trying to make a recovery, and it's, you know, the roots in it have been in there for 5 years, so if it's going to come back, it's got a good root system. All along the front I've got pentas, and I have caladiums that are coming up quite nicely. Liriope is the greens, and this comes in either straight liriope, you know, common name for it, or there's a variegated that's green and white, and that's also very pretty. The blue daisy in the front is just starting to bloom, and it's very, very heat tolerant, and it has been here for 4 years. For us, these things act as perennials more than annuals. I know for some of you up north, you have to replant every year. Well, we don't, you know. Possibly if you get a freeze and it really froze it down, you might have to cut it back to the ground, but for the most part it stays. I have Coleus here, and again, Coleus for us will reseed itself, and it almost becomes, you know, a weed is something that grows out of place. Well, Coleus I'll find through the garden, I'll find it through the lawn, and I actually pull this out like it is a weed. My Amaryllis have finished blooming here, and but I will leave these in the ground. I'll leave the almost like they're you know, a garden plant, and they are. And next spring, without me doing a thing, they will rebloom, and they'll be just beautiful. And I started to pull some of the plants that I did have here away, because I'm using them over on the driveway side. I've used them as some of my plants because I'm doing a project, and I'll show you in a flash here. But here's the Cosmos are the 2 pots in the front, and they're grown from seed. And behind that, I have Shasta daisies on the right and forget-me-nots on the left, again grown from seeds. Behind that are more Cosmos, and behind that is the giant Japanese mustard. Excuse me, I couldn't think there for a second. And on the left, there's basil that has been in there for 2 years. But I wanted to show you that I planted 2 mango seeds about 2 weeks ago, and you can see I actually have one over here and this little guy over here. So I think probably that the cosmos are going to get moved somewhere else, and I will just keep the mango in there by themselves. Back here you can see I have another pot of cosmos. And then this is a Chinese multicolored spinach, which they called Amaranth, which Amaranth is a big flower, and I'm not sure how they're connected, but that was how it was sold. And I have some nasturtiums here in the front. I actually have a nasturtium bloom under there, if you can see it. And those are just starting. That's in a pot. And those are edible, by the way. I try to grow more edibles this year than I ever have before. By the way, those are two big tomato plants back there, grown from seed. And I didn't have any place for them, so I stuck them back there so that they would get morning watering. And in this heat, they need it. And they also are getting an afternoon watering that I come out and water there. So, and of course, Gwendolyn looks wonderful as always. She never needs any makeup. She's a star on her own. I don't know if many of you have seen this plant. It's moss rose. It's also called Portulaca, is its more scientific name. And it has a little bloom on it. It is also an edible. People take it, and in other cultures, they will steam it and eat this, and it's supposed to be very, very good. But it is a weed for us. I've planted it in a couple places, but you can see that it actually runs all along your driveway. It'll find anything, any place that it can attach itself. So, you know, if you could learn to eat these things and enjoy them, well, gee, wouldn't we be the better for it? It's supposed to be very high in vitamin C and vitamin A and iron, just like we were eating spinach. But anyway, this is what I've been working on for the last few days. I cut the Bougainvillea back. It got its summer trim, and cleaned up all everything that was on the bark itself. You know, somebody made a comment that there are two different types of Bougainvillea. There's a tree type and there is a shrub type. And I have to disagree with that. A Bougainvillea is basically a vine, as far as I know it. It will come up. It may come up into an initial, you know, just like a stick, you know, one little branch. And they take these and wrap them around a 1x1 stick, piece of wood, whatever you want to call that, and attach them. And then they're trained up like this. And this is about 12 years of training that I've done. And I bought them. They were maybe 18 inches, growing around a 1x1 that was maybe a foot high. And so over the years, they've been trained into this shape. If I let them go, then all the growth would come from the bottom, and it would come from the whole branch, the whole bark of the tree. I'll get in close and show you that if I don't trim this back almost every couple weeks, it will send out leaves all along this bark. And if you don't keep it clean, then the energy goes there and it doesn't go to the beauty of, aren't these pretty? I just had another friend in California tell me that she was at a farmer's market and they were selling these blooms as cut flowers. Now, I could take this and strip the leaves off of it, the green leaves, and probably keep it for, I would think, a few days at least, but the greens wilt very quickly. But anyway, I wanted to show you this. I planted all along here. I did have Creeping Jenny, and this is Creeping Jenny. Creeping Jenny came in on, I was growing perennial peanut, and the Creeping Jenny, this is a common variety. And yes, it looks pretty. It's a good ground cover, but it chokes everything else out, which makes it a great ground cover. But if you are trying to plant other things, I had Caladiums in there, and the Caladiums died back after about 4 or 5 years, as well as the perennial peanut. So anyway, all the Creeping Jenny was ripped out all along here, and I gently dug it up because the roots will go down 6 inches, and if you miss any, well, it'll just come back. And so my pots that were on the porch, on the steps, were marigolds, and these are French marigolds. It's a burnt orange, and the French marigolds are the ones that have kind of like a, this is considered like a little seashell around, and hopefully they will be very pretty back here. And I think they're probably going to end up being about a good 2 feet high, at least 2.5 feet high. And I'm hoping they act as kind of a windbreak, because the wind does come down and sails down off, through the porch, and just about takes everything else down. We added irrigation in here. We did have irrigation, but we added some spaghetti tubing to get extra little coverage. And the plants in front are real pretty. This is a peppermint, it's a peppermint balsam, and they have that balsam fragrance, and they're also edible, as are marigolds, in case you didn't know. Now I have some, this is a dragon heart, is a variety of caladium, and I put those in front. And also I have, this is a Chinese multicolored spinach, like I showed you in the other place. And isn't it pretty? I think that'll be just a nice little treat once it's supposed to grow really quite large. And we can have that for our salad as we trim it off. And it'll be a nice alternative to the giant Japanese mustard. So that's my latest project. And I'd like to put a border of stone in front, and I'm trying to think of how I want to do that. I think it would be eye-catching, just like it is in the front yard. So as you can see, I have my projects lined up for me. Today is to hopefully clean all this off and get the project finished. And so let me swing over here to this side and show you that we've got our shrubs trimmed, thank goodness. I'm getting a little bit of Cercospora, is a fungus that goes after particular shrubs. I know we had it on our persimmon trees when we were up in North Florida, and it isn't too bad on this tree. I really try to keep it under control, and if I see any, take it off. If you use a dormant oil spray, you can kind of keep it really under control. Around here we have the Liriope again, and the Caladiums are just coming up beautifully. Now this, interestingly enough, this is a Fanny Munson is the name of it. It's one of the first ones I bought. They're both supposed to be the same bulb. This one looks more like a dragon heart, and that looks more like the Fanny Munson. And this is a Florida white. So Lake Placid, Florida, is only about an hour and a half drive from us, and it is the Caladium capital of the world. They used to brag and say they were 90% of all of the world's caladiums were grown in Lake Placid. And now that I'm more into gardening, and I can see that there's other places like Proven Winter is a big gardening center, big grower. They, have 50 varieties, and I think that more people are getting into propagating and doing it. So whatever they can brag, I guess they'll brag as long as they can. Anyway, they have beautiful things. If you ever want caladium bulbs put in Lake Placid, and I'm sure you'll get a selection of growers. So my friends, on this Memorial Day, let me say thank you to people who served and those who gave their lives, and the families who have been without them for all these years. And I hope you will subscribe and enjoy and leave me a comment. I love hearing from you. And I'll just back off and give you one last view of my yard and garden here on this wonderful day. Please come back and see me again. Talk to you soon. Remember, garden what you've got. Bye-bye.